I know. These are words I hear all the time from my kids. And honestly, I probably say them a lot more than I should. And they're two words that can totally kill having a really cool life. Why? Let's get started. So, for those of you that don't know, I'm a Leo. Why am I telling you this? Because it actually has something to do with what we're talking about today. And that is Leos are cats and cats are curious. And that is one trait that I do share in common with my cats. I am a curious person. And honestly, I think that this is something that is innate in everyone. And the reason that this episode came around is because we have baby fever in our family. And no, this is not me saying that I'm pregnant or that we're trying to get pregnant or that there are children coming into our world right now. We just had our niece and nephew. They had their first baby boy together a few days ago. Super cute. And then like 2 days later, our other niece and nephew said, hey, guess what? We're expecting too. So lots of babies going on. And what happens when a baby is born? Well, there's excitement and there is this just crazy curiosity, this craving of knowing who is this child going to become? What are they going to grow up and be like? How is our life going to unfold together, right? And this is so natural, but let's just flip the camera for a second and pretend that we are now the baby. Well, I know for the first few months, all we want to do is we just want to eat and we want to sleep and have someone change our poopy diaper. However, that innate curiosity in us just starts to come out in those baby years, right? This was never more apparent than when Ezra, my second, was born. Now, again, my girls are in vitro, so they were both manufactured at the same time, but they were processed at different points in time. And I think that Ezra knew this, right? She knew that they had the made on date was the same stamp on their butt. And when she came out and she saw Zaya was already here, she was like, whoa, wait a second. You weren't supposed to come out first. I need to know everything that you know. And so she watched Zaya like a hawk. I mean, her eyes were just locked on to Zaya all the time, just looking, learning, watching, like, what do you know that I don't know? How can I get to do what you are doing as fast as possible? Because I want to be doing it too. And it's true. She just picked up stuff like that. And I'm sure that that's common for most kids that come after the first child because they already have that model to watch and to look and to learn from, right? So babies were these sponges just soaking life in from every single direction, getting as much as we can and processing it and putting it back out in the world. And then we become these toddlers and we're more like crash test dummies at this point, right? Like, I'm going to climb up these stairs or I'm going to fall down these stairs or, oh, let me walk into this wall. Oh, the wall doesn't move when you walk into it. And we experience life in a different way of learning, but we're still just curious and going out there and trying everything that we can. And then we get a little bit bigger and we become kids that now they're just these little explorers, right? They have their little microscope, whatever, these magnifying glasses, and they become the Nancy Drews or the Encyclopedia Browns. And I know I'm totally aging myself, but that's okay. Go Google it. Good stuff. Got to learn it. Read it to your kids. They are just wanting to know everything though. And then when they find things out, they are so proud of it. I love it. My girls will come up to me and they'll be like, Mommy, what is 6 plus 6? And I'll look at them and I say, well, I don't know. What is it? 12. And they are just like owning that they knew that it is 12 and they had something that I didn't know and they taught me and they're going to go and they're going to learn some more. And I love it. It's so darn cute. And for those of you that are parents out there watching this, I mean, you know how your kids are. They're always constantly telling you about all of the things that they're learning because it's so exciting. And then we grow up a little bit more and we become teenagers. And then, then we know it all. In fact, we know more than everyone else. And suddenly we graduate from high school. We might go to college because it can help us get a job. But boom, after that, we are done. I am done with school. Learning is over. Got my job, got my car, got my apartment, have my own crew of friends. I got this thing going on. And then most of us never open a book or go back to some sort of learning again in our lives. We just do things that are for pleasure or for fun, but we don't go after that excitement and that curiosity of learning something new that really develops us and propels us forward in life like we did when we were a kid, and that we just wanted to share it and know more. And for some of us, learning is a natural bent. We kind of gravitate towards us, right? Like I'm probably preaching to that choir right now because you're here, you're listening to this. And that's the same with me. And then for other of us, we may have had that excitement, but life events happened or we got messages and it made a story in our mind that kind of put learning a little bit lower on the totem pole. And this is where, if I didn't say it before, we're kind of on a roller coaster journey today. We're going to be going through a lot of twists and turns, and we're about to hit a turn. And so we go back to that. Let's go back to where my kids are right now. In fact, 4 and 5 years, or 5 and 6 years old, right? They're in that why phase, kind of coming out of it. But for the most part, why this? Why that? Why is the sky blue? Why is the ground hard? Why do dogs wag their tails so much? And then they find that why that you answer, and there's like 12 other whys that they can dig deep into that rabbit hole for just that one. And out of a need for sanity, as parents, we just tell them, because I said so, because I said so, because I said so. Because it can be overwhelming. Everybody who's watching, say hi, Fu. My cat just popped up onto the bed for those of you listening. Again, he's curiosity. And what we don't realize that we're doing is that we're unconsciously sending a message to our kids that curiosity, we get annoyed by it. If you're curious, you're annoying. And so stop asking questions. And so that's step little number 1 right there that might temper our natural desire to keep learning. Or maybe you were in school one day, you raised your hand, you answered a question, you got it wrong, and someone raised their eyebrow or laugh, or the teacher said, no, that's wrong in front of everyone. And suddenly you were like, ooh, maybe I'm not a good learner. And so now we come to another turn in our journey where we go back to what is it about learning that helps us get excited about that process? And that is asking the right questions. So going back to the why questions, why this, why that, why this, why, and they can keep going, they kind of do get annoying. And what's crazy is that's how we operate in our own minds. We usually are asking ourselves why questions. And here's the thing. Our brain wants to have an answer for us, and it wants to be right. And it wants to say, oh, you asked that question. You'd be like, well, why do I have bad days all the time? And this is your brain. I know the answer to that one. Oh, it's because you go to bed too late and then you turn off your alarm clock and you oversleep. And then because you don't eat well and because you forget to put gas in the car all the time. That was me. And your brain is just like in hyperdrive answering all of these questions for you. And you don't realize it. You just kind of hear it as this constant talk in your head. But all you know is that you feel down and you keep repeating the cycle because your brain is telling you, oh, this is what we do. And so it keeps doing it over and over and over again. So we don't like to ask questions. We don't want to keep going. We lose the excitement about it. And it's that same thing with children. Instead of taking a question and learning how to engage further curiosity in a better way, we kind of squash it. Do the same thing for ourselves. So Tony Robbins, I loved how he put it. He said, the quality of your life is the quality of your questions. So we need to learn how to ask better questions. Instead of asking why, because usually the why gears us in a negative pathway, right? Why can't I lose weight? Why didn't I get the raise? Why didn't I get promoted? Why am I stuck in this house? Why can't I make friends? Do you see the answers that our brain is now forced in a way to give us? Oh, I can tell you why. And then keep doing more of the same so that we stay congruent with who we are, who our brain is telling us who we are. And we need to separate ourselves from our brain a little bit. We need to realize, okay, our brain is just this tool that we have working for us. And it's going to keep giving us a response to whatever the data is that we're requesting. And so we need to learn a different way of getting data out of it that works better for us. So how about we ask how questions? How can I have a better day? You can go to bed on time. You can make sure you have something healthy for breakfast. You can put your alarm clock across the room so that even when you throw a shoe at it, it won't turn off and then you get up. You can pre-plan your clothes the night before. You can, and now your brain is giving you better information and it's going to follow through on that when it starts saying it over and over again because it wants to be congruent with who it says it is. Better questions. It's the same thing with your kids when they come to you with those why questions. Hey, let's reframe how we can ask these questions. The why questions are okay, but we can ask better questions and we can get better information. And that might lead us to having fun and exploring something together, learning something new. And me as mom or dad, we're not going to be so overwhelmed by the why journey. Okay. So asking better questions, huge difference in your curiosity express. And we have different ways of learning, of course. You know, there's passive learning, like where you're reading books or you're listening to a podcast like this or listening to a speaker. You're not actually doing the thing, but you're taking in the information. There's active learning. I love active learning because it just gets you at a whole different like cellular level because you are doing it. You know, you can tell a kid how to ride a bike all you want, but until they actually get on and do the thing, they're not going to figure it out. They're not going to learn how to coordinate their balance and their legs and their handles and all of that until they do it and they fall down a couple of times, get back up and figure it out. And it's the same thing when we're adults. You're trying to learn something new until you actually do the thing. Someone can explain it to you till you're blue in the face. And the experience, the getting into action of it is what's actually going to propel you forward. And then another one of my favorite learnings is reflective learning. And this is where look at it like your hindsight is 2020, right? Where you can look back at your life and you can kind of see the breadcrumbs that have led you to this point. Like, oh, this happened here, which led me to this, which led me to this, which led me to this decision. And now that's how I got here, right? So the reflective process is when we take that passive knowledge, we take that active knowledge, we take all of the experiences that we have, and we actually sit back and we analyze the data. Just like a business would. A business looks at their trends, right? What do we have that's working? What do we have that's not working? Oh, let's do more of that. Let's cut this out. It's not working. So the same thing, you can look back at your experiences, at your life and be like, okay, when was I getting the results that I wanted? You know, if I was making lots of friends, what was going on at the time? Well, you were in school. I know we come up with all the excuses, right? If it was easier to make friends, okay, but there was still a pattern there. There was still a way that I showed up that maybe I can show up now that can help me to make friends. Or when did I feel my healthiest? What was I doing? And we can put all of it together and start to see our patterns and start to see the trends in our life and put things together that we may not have realized while we were busy doing the thing. Because sometimes while we're busy doing the thing, yes, we're learning how to do it, but we're not seeing it from that outside level where we can kind of look around and say, oh, you know what? If I tweak it just a little bit here, that gets me a better result. And there's usually a couple of different ways that I do reflective learning. The first is in my car. If you're ever driving next to me, you're going to see me in one of two modes. Either I'm rocking out with the girls, I'm like, we're singing, or I'm literally slack-jawed. My eyes look like they're zoning out. There might be a little slobber on my face. And you're thinking, do we need to call an ambulance? Is this woman okay? Is she a zombie? Hello? Maybe she should not be on the road. And I'm reflectively processing. Or my favorite way is journaling, when you write it down, and you can type it, you can, put it on your phone, but there is something about putting pen to paper where it literally passes from your brain. And I think it takes a sideways turn through your soul and lands up through your fingers onto the pen and paper. And there's just magic in it. And then you can go back and look through all of those journaling notes that you did to yourself and really see the patterns and see, this is why I am where I am. This is why I'm living the way that I'm living. And we can get curious about how we can start to change things if that's what we want. And again, another little dive in the roller coaster. I'm going to tell a little story. I was on Facebook the other day, and a friend of mine, this beautiful woman, I love her. She's absolutely amazing. She posted, hey, another 36 cycles around the sun. And I loved the way that she phrased it. Instead of, hey, I'm 36 years old, I loved the 36 cycles. And it's not the first time I've heard it, but being in a different place and thinking at a different level where I've been listening to stuff that suddenly put in perspective, wait a second. That's 36 times that she got to start over again. We made it around the sun one time. We had this journey. Oh, we are now at the beginning again. Guess what I get to do? Take anything from this journey, say, I like that, didn't like that. Let's proceed and try something new and different, which basically means that if there was something that happened in your life, you don't have to get stuck there. You got a new cycle coming around that you can start over again. And let's just be real. Everybody has had some sort of trauma in their life, right? You've had trauma. I've had trauma. My husband has had trauma. My cat has probably had trauma because I kicked him off the bed before this because he was cleaning and taking a bath. I had to get recording. So we all have trauma, and there's different degrees of trauma. And this is not to take away from it and say, oh, just forget and move on. That would be really ignorant of me to say, because the trauma forms a part of who we are. It takes its place in our soul. And it's not something that we are going to just poof away. It's something, though, that we can have reflective learning on and look at it and say, okay, I get it. I know this happened. It doesn't mean it has to happen to me every day in my mind for the rest of my life. And I don't have to live there all the time. I can take from it what serves me. And I can choose to leave the rest behind in memory. And I can move forward and I can start again and create a new cycle. I had to learn that the hard way. I was stuck for 8 years. 8 years. If you've heard my story, I had that big old wall up in front of me for 8 years, thinking I was protecting myself from anyone finding out about my dirty secrets and from the things that I had gone through that caused trauma. And I decided to hide. And for 8 cycles, I kept dragging that thing. Like, it was like a big old weight on me. I'm like, oh, this is really heavy, but I'm going to keep going. I'm determined. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to care. Why? When I chose to let it go and say, you know what? It's part of my past. It's part of my history. It formed a part of who I am today. It doesn't mean it has to be everything of who I am. And I got curious about what could life be like if I moved forward and started a new cycle around the sun. And man, life changed. It was like a 180. And again, it doesn't mean I minimized what happened in the past. It doesn't mean that I forgot about it. It doesn't mean that it didn't have effect on me. It just means that I don't have to carry the pain all the time. And so that is the next part of the journey, is getting super curious about who you are, who you can become. Because last time I checked, you're the only one that gets to live your life. And I don't know about you, but I plan to live until I'm about 120. That being said, could end tomorrow. Never know. No one's future is written, right? And my plans are, when I hit that 120, I'm going to look back and say, man, I'm so glad I tried. I fell on my face a whole bunch of times. That's okay. Stuff happened, but I kept getting up and I reinvented myself and I tried and I learned and I got further and I had all of these really cool experiences. And I can say, you know what? I may not have succeeded every time, but it's a life that was worth the living. Or I could get there and be like, man, whew, I spent some good time scrolling that phone. I had so many shopping carts filled. Oh, remember the one time I accidentally pressed buy? That took a little while to dig out of that debt, but whew, man. And those dinner pictures that I posted, they were good. They were good. I know people were drooling over them. I mean, macaroni and cheese with a little bit of bread crumble on top. Can't go wrong there. Good life. Good life. I know, I'm poking fun. It's true though. We get into these cycles and we get stuck and we just keep living the same thing over and over and over again. And we wonder, why are we bored? Why do we feel discontent? Why do we feel like there's no movement in our life? Why do we feel stuck? And it's because we forget to be curious and to go explore other options about who we are. And when I say this, I'm not saying like go abandon your family and like, hey, I'm out of here. See ya. That's not explore it within, what's already going around. But you get to be the person that sails the ship and determines the destinations of where you go in your life. Be curious about what that journey is going to be. That gets exciting. Like I'm getting excited about it right now, thinking about, whoa, dang, what are other things that I can be learning? What are other things I can be doing? Speaking of which, when you are getting curious, start to be curious about things that will matter and that will move your life forward. Okay, so another little twist and turn side story. I used to think, you're going to laugh, but it's true. I used to kind of secretly daydream about being a secret spy assassin, like a CIA rogue spy. I don't know. And I used to read all of these CIA spy thriller novels and I kind of take mental notes and I was like, oh yeah. And I'd like walk into a room and try to be quiet, which if you talk to Andrew, he says that's impossible. I'm like an elephant in a room. And I spent like hours reading these books. I mean, super entertaining, super fun to daydream about. And then one day, we were walking in a strip mall and you know how it is. You've got the stops on one side, you have the cars on the other side. And I noticed a sign for a new restaurant. And I thought, I told Andrew, I'm like, oh, that looks new. I wonder when it's opening. And out of nowhere between these cars, there were like this huge booming voice was like, oh, it's opening next week. And literally I screamed and I jumped. And in that moment, my dream died. It died right there. And I was so aware of it. And I looked at Andrew and I said, I'm never going to be a spy. This is true. You think I'm making it is all true. I was very sad. I was very disappointed. Anyway, long story short, I was spending a lot of time on these books that weren't getting my life anywhere. And are they fun? Yeah. And you might be saying, Mitch, stop right there. Don't say another word. My How to Catch a Serial Killer podcast is the only reason why my children are still alive. Don't tell me to stop. And I'm not telling you have to give it up. I'm just saying condense the time that you're spending on that and spend more time on the things that are going to move you forward and get you what you want in life. I always joke around about how I love to watch HGTV and I love design and all that stuff. And I do. And we got the privilege of being able to design this house that we're in. And I spent a lot of time researching, looking at things and learning, okay, we want to make sure we have good flow. We want to make sure that it's aesthetically pleasing and all this stuff. And I also kind of was like, okay, and we're on a budget. So I got to figure out how to make all of this work and get it within the budget. And it was really cool. I did spend a lot of time on that. And because of it, I ended up getting to get paid to design the house next door to me. So it was something that actually moved me forward in my life. And it's something that if I wanted to, I could continue to pursue. So if you were to look at what I am spending most of my time on these days, it has to do with psychology. It has to do with personal development. It has to do with how can I make a better life for myself? How can I think in better ways? What can I do to pass on to my girls that they have the drive and the desire to be women of character, to be women of depth, to be women that go and do things and live life out loud. And the next part of the roller coaster ride is taking that curiosity and plugging it into other people. Because our lives can only go so far and we can push ourselves to the limit and we can ask ourselves when we get to that limit, what's the next step? And there's always a next step. Until you're dead in the ground, there's always another possibility. However, the way to make it really expand and increase and build you up in your life is to be of service to other people. And I know right now you're like, that's all I do, Mitch. I serve everyone. I can't take on anymore. And I'm not talking about the day-to-day, like I got to make dinner for everyone. I got to do everyone's laundry, this and that. That's stuff that we do, right? And we can assign it out or we can work a different system around it. What I am talking about is truly going out and giving of your time, giving of your resources, giving of your knowledge, and helping someone out and helping them get to somewhere they couldn't have gotten without you. Or it can be as simple as, hey, my friend is sick. Let me make some dinner and take it over so that she doesn't have to cook for her family tonight. And that literally makes your soul expand. It makes your soul expand because we are humans. We were meant to be connected. When you have a baby that's born, if it's never held, it'll die. That's how strong we need and crave to have that human connection and to be in community with others. So not only get curious about yourself, get curious about other people and how you can be of better service and how you can learn more. Man, I got to tell you, I'm learning all the time. I'm in my 47th cycle around the sun. I don't have all this down by any means. I am constantly having to learn and reflect and go, whoops, messed up there. Let's redirect and try that again. And on the last curve of this roller coaster as we go down, there's one more area to be curious about. And this is another funny story. So last week, I sent out an email to everyone on my email list. And if you're not on it, you can join at funrichmom.com. You'll get updates on episodes and random musings of what I'm learning about or going through. And this last week, it was about AI. So let me tell you why. I had remembered back when we were in Y2K. For those of you that don't remember that, that was year 2000, back in 1999. And for those of you that do remember it, you're pretty much laughing with me going, oh my gosh, can't believe it. So everyone was freaking out about the fact that the computers were not programmed correctly to change from 1999 to the year 2000. And when it hit, they weren't going to recognize it. And it was going to be just like mass chaos and destruction. And the world was just going to flip out and freak out and go crazy. Like truly, people were thinking about this. And at that time, there was this show on sci-fi that I watched. So again, 1999, and this was telling about 50 years into the future, 2040. Well, I guess 2050 is what they were talking about, but here we are in 2024. We're halfway there. A lot of this stuff has come true. They're talking about technology of the future. And I remember watching it, and I was just like, whoa, this is amazing. Like they would do these little dramatizations. And I remember this one it was a cardiac surgeon. And he was performing surgery, but he wasn't actually touching the patient. It was very Iron Man, like where the computer is not anywhere, but these images are projected in front of him. And he's like, shoom, 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 and doing all this stuff. In the meanwhile, there were these nanobots inside of the patient, and they were doing all of the things that the doctor was telling it to do. And it was making the repairs. And the person woke up and they're like, woo, no pain. I'm like, that's awesome. How cool is that? I mean, who wants to have their chest hacksawed open and then take like a crank and they crack you open so that they can get to your heart and you're out for like a month because you're in so much pain after the surgery? Like, whoa, I can't wait until people figure this stuff out. And we have all of this technology. And I'm like, yes, the future. And then suddenly the screen went dark and you could hear these footsteps. Pooh, 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 pooh. And now you're in this back alley of a seedy place and there's water dripping somewhere. And next thing you know, you're being harvested for your organs on the black market by these nanobots in the underbelly of this technology. And I was like, no, stop. Don't make the nanobots. We're all going to be walking around with one lung and no legs. I don't know why no legs, but I mean, this was what I was thinking. And I just got scared and I'm like, I don't want anything to do with this stuff. And I had a fear around it. And suddenly this last year, I mean, let's be real, AI has been around for a while. We have Siri, we have Alexa, we have our vacuum robots. And last year, AI just made like this huge, hello, I am truly on the scene now. And I don't know about you, but I'm a kid of the 80s. I grew up with the Terminator. I grew up with iRobot. I grew up with Matrix. These robots, they're just waiting until they surpass us and they can say, listen, we're taking you out because you're all bad for humanity. Like, I'm watching for the little red eye to come on my little robot vacuum, even though she's unplugged. And so when AI came out like that, I was like, ooh, very hands off. I didn't want to know anything about it. Because to me, all of these things were coming out. I think there was a Joe Rogan podcast where it was completely AI and it looked like him and it sounded like him and it talked like him. And I'm like, oh, this is bad. This is really, really bad. And so I had a lot of fear around it, fear of the unknown, right? And then I had a friend, all of a sudden they told me like, I use AI. I'm like, what do you use AI for? She's like, oh, I had it make me a packing list for my vacation. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. So then my curiosity was like, hello, I am right here. And I was like, all right, curiosity, come on out of the bag. Let's go check this out. And I got on, I made my little chat GPT account. And I put in, make me a dinner menu for the next week. Because I don't know about you, but meal prepping, meal planning, not my superpower, not my thing by far. And we are on the carnivore diet. Like it's meat, and more meat. And I still have a problem planning our meals. And so I put it in, I put in all the parameters and I was like, meals, not only dinner, but breakfast and lunch. And I was like, oh, I don't have to think about this. It's all done. And then I started putting in more things and I realized, oh my gosh, I have a personal assistant. I have my own personal assistant. And this is really, really cool. And I figured, AI, it is not going anywhere. It's going to be here. Are some people going to use it for bad? Yeah, some people use anything for bad, but most people, they're going to be using it for pretty cool stuff. So I may as well figure it out and get to learn about it. And cool thing, now I can use it for things in my life that are just kind of like, I don't want to have to deal with this with my brain power. I want to use it somewhere else. So, hey, AI, what do you think? And it's been pretty cool. But if I wouldn't have gotten over my fear, I'd still be, figuring out dinners every night of the week. And that goes along with things you don't like, or even people you don't like, groups you don't like. A lot of the time we squash our curiosity around it and we just get really loud about it, or we put up a wall and protect ourselves against it because we never actually take the time to find out, okay, what's truly going on? Who is this person truly? What if I actually took the time to get to know them? You don't like them? No big deal. Okay, at least you got to know that you didn't like them for real. It wasn't just like, you kind of annoy me because I've heard about you. Or there's a group of things, whatever. Hey, I don't know about this, so I don't like it. I'm not going to learn about it. Well, what if I did take the time? Let me get to know it a little bit more. You might find that it wasn't so bad after all. So with that, our train comes in for a landing. I guess our roller coaster, a little train car roller coaster ride. I don't know what it's technically called. I'll have to look it up. Be curious about that, right? Someone can put it in the comments. It's called a roller coaster car. I hope that this has piqued some curiosity in you about where you can start expanding your horizons and looking at new ways of seeing the world and seeing your life. Because man, it can be good. So with that, I'm going to leave you with our joke. As always, this one made me chuckle. Why is grass dangerous? Because it's full of blades. Ah! All right. You may not have laughed. I did, though, and it was fun. With that, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I value it. I appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and if I could ask you something greatly, share it with someone, and leave a review. Oh my gosh, I forgot to ask about that, because that will help this episode and future episodes get out to more people who want to hear stuff like this or need to hear stuff like that. So I would appreciate that tremendously. And I thank you in advance. And if you want to join the email list and get my random musings and ideas of what's going on during the week, then you can join me at funrichmom.com and email me back. Let me know what's going on in your world, because I am curious about you and who you are and what you'd like to hear about. With that, make it fun, make it rich. I'll see you next week, and bye-bye.